another fantastic guest this week, Mike. I'm really excited to talk to this individual because it's not often we get a chance to talk to somebody who's been a part of the UCF athletic family for as long as our guest has this week. He's seen it all, done it all, probably twice. Lived to tell about it, and he's going to tell us some fun stories today. He's also a UCF Hall of Famer, and certainly a name a lot of UCF fans will know off the top of their head, Mike. Happy to have Coach Alan Gooch on our show this week. Coach, first off, appreciate you taking some time. I know it's a busy time of year for you right now, but appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to join us.
Absolutely, guys. Really appreciate it. And Mike, appreciate you guys coming around and being around the players at different events. I know the last time we bumped was at the Varsity Nights golf tournament. So we really appreciate you guys coming out and being around it.
No, I always love catching up with our fellow Knights, and I want to start there, Coach. How did you become a UCF, a Golden Knight back then? Take us through your UCF origin story. How you kind of got associated with UCF. I know you played there in the very, very early stages of the program. I'd love to learn more about how you wound up at UCF.
I like a lot of guys at that time, it was back in 1981, got on campus at UCF, like a lot of players. And a lot of players, we started recruiting, when I was a coach, which was soon after, started as a graduate assistant. But, the opportunities in Florida were tough. At Florida State, Miami for Division I, there were no Division II, Bethune-Cookman, Florida A&M 1AA at that time. And, but there was just no other football. And, it was hard. So it was great to hear that Florida Tech was going to change the name to UCF and start football. And that was Dr. Colburn, that got that rolling. And, I'll never forget that. It was great that my defensive coordinator in high school, I went to Clearwater High School, called my mom and said, "Hey, they're getting ready to do this. Alan needs to give me a call." So there we go. That's how it all started.
Well, we've talked to a bunch of different players from different eras, and one of the things I love to learn about is the facilities and what you walked into when you got to campus. We've obviously talked to the guys who played in the late 90s and sort of the mid 80s, but you were there really right from the beginning, Coach. I'd love to learn, what were the facilities like? Where did you work out? Where did you practice? Did you have locker rooms? Give us a little glimpse back into the early days of UCF football.
Yeah, we all had hooks in the baseball locker rooms and the bathrooms down at the baseball field. We really just had hooks. I think there was some lockers, but we all had hooks at that time. We worked out in the dome. You probably heard that one a few times, and that was where all students worked out. So a lot of this stuff was really on the cuff. The stuff, facilities in the middle of changing, because I think it was maybe 2 years after that, or 1983 at least. When Lou Saban came in, that we already had the first building in the Wayne Dench complex up and rolling. So that team was working out on the back porch of that building, and then it was enclosed. So it's been a building process. Our practice fields are where the UCF band currently practice. So we had a big wooden tower out there for filming, and it was, we had 2 practice fields, at that time. And so it was, but it's nothing like it is now. That's the beauty of being a part of it and helping fundraise even today, to help work and keep all of those things going in the right direction.
Do you have any funny stories from back then? Did you guys have to share helmets? Were you short on shoulder pads? Any funny stories of the growing pains of the early football days?
Yeah, there were no sharing of anything that I could recall in that regard, except for, there are a few funny stories. I was actually at dinner with a couple of people this weekend that they brought up a story that they had heard, and they wanted me to confirm it. And I said, it is true. When Gene McDowell got here, he was Bobby Bowden's longtime recruiting coordinator. Bill Peterson was the AD at the time, and was a Florida State guy, and he hired Gene McDowell to be our head coach. And so we had a lot of good relationships with Florida State. There was some time when they sent a bunch of shoes down, and I remember the equipment guys were coloring in the maroon Nike swoosh and making it black, things like that. I remember our first playoff game in 1AA. We had to go to Youngstown State. We didn't have undergear for everybody, so I remember one of the equipment guys goes, "Why don't we just get some pantyhose?" So they got pantyhose, and the players wore those. But I think there was even a Joe Namath quirk in there about him wearing pantyhose when he played, to stay warm. So there was things like that going on. There was a time when Lou Saban was the head coach. The first time the team had flown, I believe we flew into New Orleans, but I believe we were playing Southeast Louisiana at the time, a 1AA team, and we got in, and all of a sudden, we've got buses and police escort. We were a little shocked. The guys came up and said, "Are you guys the team from Florida?" And we said, "Yes." And so we got on the buses and headed out with our police escort. About an hour or 45 minutes later, Florida State flew into New Orleans to play Tulane. And they were wondering where their police escort was. So we were the team from Florida, got there a little ahead of time. The funny story is Lou Saban was our head coach at the time. Gene McDowell was the assistant coach at Florida State at the time, but he was also the travel coordinator for Florida State. But he told us that Coach Bowden just kind of whipped around and was like, "Coach, what's going on? What's going on?"
Well, I got to know, Coach, did the pantyhose work? Did it keep people warm?
UCF, I think we've talked about this before. We've had some big games that ended with big kicks. Eddie O'Brien, the first time we beat Bethune-Cookman, a 1AA team, 55-yarder that bounced through the uprights. The first time we get an opportunity to play in the 1AA playoffs, our move from Division II to 1AA, we're going to play Youngstown State, who was coached by Jim Tressel at the time. They were the only undefeated team in the country at that time, and they were number one against the rush on defense. And the weather, I believe it was 30 degrees, maybe 29, 30 degrees. We knew it was going to be cold. First round of the playoffs when we get to Youngstown, and Willie English and Mark Giacone ran all over those guys early. We didn't throw the ball very much. It was just very cold. So the pantyhose worked, kept us on the ground game. And Franco Grilla kicks a field goal to win it, and that was a big win for us. First year in the playoffs to get that win, and so the pantyhose worked.
You got to play under the first ever UCF football coach, Don Jonas. We haven't heard too many stories about him. Can you tell us a little bit about his style and what he was like?
He was a rough and tumble guy. Former quarterback at Penn State, played in the Canadian League, won a Grey Cup. So at practice, he could show the quarterbacks how to wing it. He would get out there and throw Pascal himself. He was no stranger to getting out and doing that. A lot of I heard stories of Steve Spurrier doing the same thing, when he was a coach. So Don Jonas was a heck of an athlete. He was a punter, kicker, could do all those things. And he was a guy that was a tough competitor. I remember our first year that I talked Coach McDowell into allowing the alums play our football team in a fundraiser in the spring. And so it was our varsity night alum football players. We were playing our varsity football team in the spring. And I believe the first year, Don Jonas also was our quarterback. He wasn't a quote unquote an alum of the school, but he was an alum of the program. And he came out suited up. Coach had to be, in his late 50s, early 60s, and out there throwing the football. So he was a competitor. He was a competitor.
Wow. And then also going into the next year from 81 to 82, that's when we made the jump from Division III to Division II, kind of like what UCF is doing now, moving into the Big 12. What was the program, the excitement around the program going from D3 to D2 at that time?
Guys, I think we were talking about it just before we got on the air. There were just so many good football players in the state of Florida that just weren't able to stay in state and play. And there weren't enough scholarships or out of state tuition if you were only going to get a partial scholarship, that kept kids from playing. And so in Florida State, Miami, like I said, only 85 scholarship players. And you think about all the schools and the football players that were in the state of Florida at that time. It's the reason that UCF rocketed up so quickly. I believe the stat is, or UCF has made history. It's the youngest program to ever go through all of the stages and get to the Power Five the quickest. And, the reason is the growth of the state of Florida. Bless Walt Disney for bringing it to Orlando, and the popularity around that, their interest in changing, wanting UCF to not just supply jobs and students post-grad to work at the Cape, but also, to supply an staff to work at Walt Disney World. They needed a lot of different majors and a lot of different people that were skilled in a lot of different areas, not just tech or computer science or engineering for the Cape. So the name being changed from FTU to UCF was big, and the school just kept growing to the point where it's the largest school per enrollment. So, in my opinion, we always felt it was going to happen. I remember when Gene McDowell first came here, he sat in the conference room and told our staff that this job is not a great job right now, but it's going to be. And everybody could see that. And that's the reason he left Florida State to come to UCF.
Well, Coach, I hate to bring up bad memories, but a lot of fans, they're familiar, obviously, with the 2015 winless season. Some of us diehards know about the 2004 winless season. Not a lot of people know about 1982, another season where UCF did not win a game. What was that season like? Obviously, so early in the program, obviously not winning a game, and some of the games weren't particularly close looking at scores. There was a 69-0, there was a 60-10. There's some tough games. A, what was that season like? And B, as a young program, were you concerned about what going winless might mean for the future of UCF football?
First time I don't know if there was anybody on that team that experienced anything like that. It was pretty rough. There's no doubt about it. But I think we could all look around and realize that, we lost a lot of good defensive players in 1981 that were playing on that 82 team, but we were going to another level. We were non-scholarship going to play scholarship players, and Division I AA at the time had 63 scholarships per team, and so it was quite daunting. But nobody ever gave up. There wasn't anybody giving up or anything like that. So I don't think there was ever an attitude of no matter what the score was, we were going to keep rolling, and obviously we did that. There was a change made in head coaching. I'll never forget Dr. Colbin bringing in Lou Saban. Here we go through a tough 1982 year, but bringing in Lou Saban in 1983 to be our head coach, moving to Division II. And he said that our goal is not to stay in Division II. Our goal is to go 1A, and this is the man that's going to take us there. And, a lot of people, my age certainly know who Lou Saban was. He coached OJ. He brought OJ Simpson down to start the OJ Gate Crashers, to fundraise for us. So he came down. Steinbrenner was a donor at the time because Coach Saban had been the president of the New York Yankees as well. He's quite a character. But he started that process and moving it forward. I think that it was always we always had our head up, and we were always grinding at UCF. That's for sure.
Yeah, fun trivia fact. Sam Weir was the coach that season, the shortest tenured coach in UCF history, his only season at UCF. Coach, I'm curious, we always like to ask this of different eras. Who are your rivals back then? Who are the schools that UCF you couldn't wait to play? Maybe a little bit of bad blood between that you circled on the calendar every year?
Guys, Georgia Southern, without a doubt, was the rival at the time. They were just cranking up football as well. I think they had football and then they dropped it for a long time. Irk Russell was a longtime defensive coordinator at Georgia. He took over the program and started the Georgia Southern ball rolling forward. And UCF and Georgia Southern met many times in the regular season, but also in the 1AA playoffs. And a lot of heartbreakers there. Tracy Ham, who's actually an assistant athletic director at Georgia Southern still today, was the quarterback that led them to 5 national championships at Georgia Southern, 4 of them at least. And Tracy was one heck of an athlete. He was a North Florida guy that ended up playing at Georgia Southern. But that was a big rival for us. It was our Florida Georgia game and Florida Georgia rivalry for sure.
Well, after a couple of rough seasons early on, we really started turning things around. I'd say around 86. I think from 86 to 95, we had a winning record every season. What was the big difference in the program during those years?
Yeah, it may be you guys have the stats in front of you there, but maybe the longest run of winning, and I think it was indicative of exactly what we all thought. Get some resources, get some facilities, get things rolling. Coach McDowell supplied a stable ground for us, remaining head coach at that time. He was so ingrained. He was the recruiting coordinator at Florida State before he left to come to UCF, and had a lot of great relationships, obviously, in the state of Florida and South Georgia as well. He's a Waycross guy. So we had, we just had some great years there, great years of winning, and a lot of good athletes. That even Lou Saban had recruited. I believe on that 1986 team, there were 6 or 7 players on a Division II football team that played in the NFL and Canadian football. On the offensive side of the ball, you had Bernard Ford and Teddy Wilson. I think Bernard played with Buffalo and Teddy with Cleveland. Coming out, Glenn McCombs was a tight end that year, and he played with Pittsburgh. Dana Thyssen was a quarterback, and he was taken as a free agent with the Cowboys. And then 2 guys I was coaching at that time, Aaron Sam and Elgin Davis, who Elgin's in the UCF Hall of Fame. They were both starting fullback and tailback, and they also played in the NFL, with New England and Cleveland, respectively. So it's really pretty amazing. But it is an example of why UCF was able to make the move so quickly. Is that we've always had great skill players and not to say that we didn't have good offensive and defensive linemen as well. 1987 we had some really tough kids playing on defense as well as offense. But to continue to grow, I was glad to hear Coach Malzahn talk about this in the Coke luncheon on Thursday, that he feels like he's got the offensive line and the defensive line ready to go, and you're going to need 2 healthy groups, to be able to come in and spell the starters, because that's truly where the games are won and lost. And when we were making our moves through all the divisions, you could tell, from a coaching standpoint, if Nebraska, for example, we go to Nebraska with a Dante Culpepper quarterback football team, and we're winning 17-14 at halftime. They had just won the national championship the year before. Scott Frost was their quarterback, and we come out in the second half, and we're still holding our own. But when Nebraska sent in their second team offensive line, and we couldn't counter with a whole defensive line, that made the difference. They started wearing our guys down, and that made the difference in the ball game. So, I think that you look through all the years and you can see a lot of great skill players, and I think that from a skill standpoint, UCF is ready to go, and I'm glad to hear that we're continuing to get the players that we need on the offensive line, the defensive line to win ball games late. You got to be able to possess the ball, and you've got to be able to put pressure on the quarterback with your defensive line. Those 2 things are so key.
Speaking of winning a game late, a lot of people don't remember one of the most famous games in 88, the Troy State game, the noise penalty game, right? Everybody talks about it like we blew them out that day. I looked at the box score. We were losing in the third quarter of that game. We were down 18-6 in the second half.
That's right. That's exactly why Linda Gooch had to get her cheer squad up and get the fans rolling, and we had our first noise penalty. Linda and I talked about that every once in a while, and it comes up in conversation with people from time to time. She remembers that the official coming over to Coach McDowell and saying, "Coach, you're going to need to tell the fans either to quiet down, or we're going to assess you a penalty, unsportsmanlike contact, delay a game." And he said, "We'll take the penalty." And so his history from there was the noise penalty. After that game, they created a Pittsburgh Steelers gold terrible towel, if you will, and it was the noise penalty towel. And one of my wife's, shining moments. She loves to talk about that game and felt like that her team had an impact on the game.
I've never heard of a referee telling a team to tell the fans they need to quiet down. Have you ever heard of that ever?
Yeah, in the early years, that was happening. Yeah, it was happening. It was, and there were, I believe there were coaches that would get on or somebody would get on and tell the fans to quiet down. But, that didn't last very long. That didn't last very long at all.
Well, I want to get back to the start of your coaching career, Coach. Obviously, you played at UCF, and then you transitioned pretty quickly, even as a young man, right into the sort of the coaching ranks. What was it about coaching that sort of attracted you that you said to yourself right after you're done playing, "Hey, I think I want to do this"?
Yeah, great question. I wanted to be a forest ranger, coming out of high school. I love the outdoors. My wife, Linda, and I, we do a lot of hiking and kayaking and things like that on our vacation. We love the outdoors. But, when I got to school and I just realized I had a youth pastor at Calvary Baptist Church in Clearwater, Florida, that was always telling me that he felt like I would be a good coach, teacher. And I think he was really just trying to recruit me to stay there. But I did have a great time working with the kids there, and then at the boys clubs and girls clubs there in Clearwater, Florida. And so I decided to change majors and got my degree in education and started coaching. And I always had the Dallas Cowboys were my grandfather's favorite team. His last name was Garrison, and they had a guy named Walt Garrison that was playing for the Cowboys back in the day. So when I was a little guy, I would watch Cowboy games with him, and that's when I first saw Tom Landry. And then, when I continued to grow and watch Tom Landry win Super Bowls and things like that, and the way he conducted himself, he was a great role model for me. I remember writing him, and he wrote a letter back. I still have it today, folded up in his book. Yeah, he was a role model. And my high school coaches, they were great coaches. We had some great high school football teams at Clearwater High School back in the day.
We've had the pleasure of talking to a lot of players who played under you. Actually had one last week. Alex Haynes was on our show last week, who I know you coached as well. If we called any one of those guys up right now and asked them to describe you as a coach, what was your coaching style? Were you a tough guy? Were you sympathetic? Were you somebody who kind of made them run? What would your players say about you as a coach?
Well, I certainly didn't try to motivate by fear. I try to model myself after Coach Landry. And I should also mention John Wooden. I was a big John Wooden fan. Both of those guys were teachers. They were the type of coach that, they weren't guys that would be coaches that would be dog cussing people. But they were demanding, and I certainly was demanding. But I wasn't going to be blaming players. I was going to, if they had some failures, I would take it on myself. If they didn't understand a play or how to do it or a technique, then, that's my fault. I need to find a way to get them taught. Now, if it was a lack of effort, I could find a way to get their attention and get my foot up their tail if I needed. And so, there'd be some running after practice. And in fact, Coach McDowell, the whole time he was the coach, I was his discipline coach. In the mornings, I ran. Oh my gosh! Here I'm forgetting the name of it. It was Dawn Patrol. There you go, Dawn Patrol. And so if you got out of line and you had some problems, you had to meet me up in my office at 4:30 in the morning for Dawn Patrol. And I like to run, and so sometimes I'd even run with those guys, but sometimes I would just take them in the car, take them down the University Boulevard and drop them off on a lighted road, by the way. It's lighted all the way up University Boulevard to campus, and they would have to meet me in the office. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not sure what those guys would say, but I certainly always felt like I was a teacher.
One of the coolest stories I've seen or heard about you was how you learned sign language. We had a deaf running back, Dwight Collins, and tell me more about that. It wasn't just football related? Did you have to learn sign language completely? You know everything? You know how to speak in sign language still to this day?
If you don't use it, you lose it, just like anything, I believe. I still know the alphabets in some sign, for sure. But we actually had to. I did learn sign. I wasn't able to communicate everything while I was teaching. What we did learn in a hurry is that we were going to need an interpreter, as I wasn't going to be able to just sign to Dwight about what I wanted done. Even on the field or in the meeting. A lot of times on the field, obviously, if I was one-on-one with Dwight, I could talk to him about working harder. I needed him to be faster, things like that. But when I'm teaching to the whole group, we needed an interpreter. So we did have a full-time interpreter that was always following our group around, and was a student that was also a UCF student that was learning to sign as a career, that would follow us around on the field and then always be available for me in our meetings. But yeah, I could sign one-on-one, with him and talk to Dwight. It was certainly a lot easier to just talk about our language in football, that's for sure. And like most teams, everybody's got a sign language, signing, in plays and signaling to the quarterback. So Dwight had to spend some time learning our sign language as well. And he did a heck of a job. It was certainly second nature to him. Back then, you could see Dante Culpepper standing out of the huddle, and Dwight Collins would be standing right next to him, both getting the play from me from the sideline.
You guys were honored during the ESPY Awards that year. How cool was that? Did you actually go to the ceremony?
Yes, I did. Yep. And Coach Lee Corso, was there, and he was, obviously a Floridian and living here in Orlando at the time, working for Dixon Ticonderoga. So it was kind of a great family deal. We've known Coach for a long time, and so it was great to be able to be there on stage with him and Dwight. And Dwight was certainly deserving of the award. He was also we were invited up to the White House. He was named the student athlete of the year for the Institute of Sport. And it was, we were in the Oval Office with President Clinton at the time, and he was being recognized with some other players, and he was certainly deserving. It's very difficult to play on the offensive side of the ball and not be able to hear. A little easier on the defensive side just to watch the snap. So Dwight doing it on offense, there just hasn't been that many players to do that on offense at the Division I level. And so he was certainly deserving of the award. Really worked hard.
Coach, every era has like that special season, right, where it feels like things just kind of click and come together as a team. You experienced one in your coaching career. Tell us more about the 1990 team. That team goes 10-4. You mentioned obviously the win at Youngstown. We come back, we have our first playoff game, win that one, and then Georgia Southern gets in our way again. By the way, 1-10 all time against Georgia Southern as UCF. We got to figure that out one of these days. But talk to us about that. Talk to us about that 1990 team. What made that team so special? What made that team that season just click for everybody?
That's Adam. Great point. It was a group of guys that actually, so many of them stay in contact, and that's typical of any team that has success like that. They're able to enjoy that success together, but still stay in contact with a lot of those guys. Certainly on that team, Sean Beckton comes to mind. He's a longtime UCF coach. Sean was, a great player as well. I had the opportunity to coach when he was a punt returner for us, and the Willie Englishes, the Sean, Sean Becktons, Mark Giacone, who was a very tough player, Ron Johnson, who was a very, very steady quarterback, won the position that year and just was like having a coach on the field. He was very, very, very good coach, player coach on the field for us. Perry Belasis, who doesn't get a lot of, the accolades that he is so deserving of. Perry blocked for all those guys, ran the ball, never fumbled the ball. I mean, he had 233 carries and never fumbled the ball. He never dropped a pass. Guys like that, on offense, we had some really good players. Then on defense, and then Franco Grillo, who is a Hall of Famer, as our kicker. And Ted Coltrane, who was a wide receiver for us at that time, just a steady guy that you could always count on him doing what he was supposed to do. There's just so many guys like that on both sides of the ball that just did a heck of a job. They were just all grinders, and they were all also, guys that what I remember most about that group is they came out to practice and just didn't have to push them. There might have been a couple of guys that you had to push, but overall, their teammates were also going to push them. And so just had a great group of players that, and you hear that a lot with teams that are successful, that it's not just the coaches that are driving them. You got to have some great senior leadership, and we had some great senior leadership on that team. I'll never forget the locker room after the Youngstown State win. Nobody gave us credit. We went up there, and a lot of, they were, Florida boys going up and playing in that weather. And, we were hearing all the stories about the Bucks never being able to win late in the playoffs because of the cold weather, things like that. And then we go out and we get it done. We play their game, and we're very physical and get it done on the ground and win our first playoff game.
Well, now we know the secret to that was pantyhose, obviously, Coach. But
yeah,
I think the other thing to think about through that era is Coach Mike Kruczek, the offensive coordinator at that point in time. Obviously, you coached under. He ran a really unique offense, even for that period of time. You think about the quarterbacks that came through UCF: Darren Slack, Darren Hinch, obviously Dante Culpepper, Ryan Schneider later on, and Cruz's tenure. You coached under Coach Kruczek. Describe his offense for us. How revolutionary was what he was doing back then, with really kind of a pass first sort of spread style offense that hadn't really taken off in college football like it has today? I think if you're listening to us today and you just woke up and you're like, what, they didn't run the spread 20 years ago? Yeah, no, they didn't, except for Mike Kruczek. Tell us more about his offensive system.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Coach Kruczek, Mike, great offensive mind, and understood the passing game better than anybody that I've ever been around. Now, I say that with a note. Obviously I only coached at UCF, but because of that, I made it my business to go around and listen to different coaches, get in the room and hear them talk about their passing game. And would do that in the spring and different NFL camps in the summer. And I never heard anybody that was as dynamic as Mike was with the passing game. There's no question about it. We were doing things that people weren't doing, but we needed to do those things. We needed to get the ball on the perimeter in a hurry, because we always did not have, if you were going to match up, for example, against an Alabama and Auburn, we just lost to Auburn, but then we beat Alabama, and we were able to do that, not mashing the ball all the time. We would run the ball to be able to keep people honest, but getting the ball out on the perimeter, finding ways to get the ball to kids that could make somebody miss one-on-one. And so that was a big part of our offense as always. And a lot of that credit for those years of winning go to our offense, and it's being dynamic, and Mike's ability to be able to get that taught.
Well, unfortunately, at the end of the 2003 season, they let Mike go, and they put you in charge, and you were the head coach for the last couple games that season. What do you remember about them making that decision? Who came to you and told you what was going to happen in the rest of the year?
Definitely a tough time. Coach Mike and I have worked together for 17, 18 years at that time, I believe, or longer. It was a tough time, as you guys may know, and it's no secret that we had so many players that were suspended that year for forging some academic documents, and not making excuses for anybody, but we were doing some training camp, and some guys needed to get their paperwork in so that we could travel to the first Penn State game. And kids being kids, there was some mistakes made, but it was very unfortunate that we lost a lot of players to suspension that led to the losses that we incurred at the end of the season, and then certainly the last two games of the season. Very, very, very tough time. Very disappointing for sure. But again, our players that we had, that were there, they were fighting. Remember, I think UCF, we had our first nationally televised game. That first game after Coach Kruczek was not with us, against Marshall, and we were leading the game for a bit, and just shows you the resilience of the players. Even though we were down, we had a lot of people suspended. They were still fighting, and I have a lot of respect for those guys. That's for sure.
Well, you mentioned some of the names of the running backs you coached over the years. I'll give you a few. Mark Giacone, Marquette Smith, Alex Haynes, Elgin Davis, Willie English. I'm going to ask you a question. If you had to get 1 yard, your life is on the line. One running back for 1 yard, who you picking for that play?
Yeah, that is a tough question, and I'm sure this is going to be played, and I'm going to get a lot of text if I don't answer it correctly, right? Yeah, if that's the case, then I think you do quarterback sneak to Dante Culpepper.
That's a good call. That's a good play call. Yeah,
I'm not going to upset anybody, and nobody's going to be able to rebuff me on that one. That's for sure. But what I will tell you is, out of that whole group, there isn't anybody I wouldn't give the ball to. That's for sure. Those guys could all get you one. That's for sure. All of them could do that.
Well, I kind of took the luster off my next couple.
It really did. Good try, Mike. Coach, we talk a lot about Dante. We had a chance to have him on the show a while back, and obviously he's a legend in UCF. You were there during his time. Can you explain or describe to people who weren't there how big a deal it was to have Dante Culpepper decide to come to UCF? We had Coach Lounsbury on recently. He gave us a story about the recruiting trip and telling everybody, hey, Dante's coming, and people have been like, yeah, well, okay, whatever. We don't believe you. April Fool's Day, whatever. How big a deal was it when Dante finally walked on campus and you realized that he was going to be a part of your team?
Yeah, it was a big deal. I don't remember it that way where nobody was saying he wasn't going to show up, because I do remember us being very, very prepared for that. Miss Emma was coming, who adopted Dante, and that was going to be a very important visit. No question about it. It was obviously the Dante helped us turn the corner so quickly. That's for sure. You probably had heard that Florida was recruiting him really hard at the time. What I thought our whole staff did, and Paul was, our offensive line coach that was recruiting Ocala Vanguard. Every staff divides up the areas, and that was Coach Lounsbury's area, and he did a great job of staying on Dante and taking the materials that we had. We knew, we had what we had to do as a staff. We were going to not always be able to recruit players that were, that were academically sound. Now, Dante, to his credit, he played football, basketball, and baseball. If you guys may know that he was drafted by the New York Yankees, that was one thing we were worried about, is it might just go play professional baseball instead of come play college football at all. But he was great in all those sports. Kurt Sparrow at the time wanted Dante to play on the basketball team. We during his official visit, he had the opportunity to meet Coach Sparrow, and we were certainly going to give him that opportunity if he wanted to do it. But Dante was playing all those sports and not getting it done always in the classroom. So there was some skepticism by some that he wasn't going to make it, and so that helped us. But we had our recruiting tools included roadmaps on being able to help young student athletes in high school see how they could make it, what they needed to make in the classroom to get the GPA to match the test score, to be able to do it. And to Dante's credit and his coaching staff, mostly Alex Castaneda, I would give a big tip to Alex Castaneda, who was the offensive coordinator at Ocala Vanguard at the time, who did a really good job of helping Dante and working with Coach Lounsbury to make sure that he got the grades that he needed in the classes he needed to be eligible. There was just it was a lot of work by a lot of people, and he did it. That's for sure. And it was a big day, obviously, big day for us, and it is that way for all schools. Some of the biggest days in UCF history have been those Januaries when we have recruiting weekends, and they'll continue to be those weekends. They'll still, Coach Malzahn after this year is going to have a big January recruiting weekend come up. That's for sure. And it's going to be a big day.
Well, Coach, you were also the recruiting coordinator for a while you were at UCF as well. Do you have one crazy recruiting story? Was there a guy you went after, you wanted really bad, that just didn't work out in your favor? Do you have any crazy recruiting stories?
Oh, we have few of those. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. A couple that always come to mind. well, Dwight Collins, the coach that was recruiting him had showed Coach McDowell and I the tape, and we said, yeah, he looks like he's certainly a guy that we need to take. And then he let us know he was deaf, and so we looked at each other and said, we got to go. We got to go on him. We'll just have to do what we have to do. And so certainly I was going to commit to learning sign language. But that was definitely a day that I'll never forget, him saying, well, he's deaf. What are we going to do now? And so we certainly kept after it. We were going to try to make it happen. Another great story, Brandon Marshall's recruiting story. I remember, I believe Scott Fountain was the coach at the time that was recruiting Lake Howell High School. And Scott brings down a tape and he says, look, he goes, Coach, I got it teed up here. I think you're only going to need to see one play here to make a decision on this kid. And I go, okay, pop it on. And so Brandon Marshall is quarterbacking at Lake Howell at the time. And I believe it was into the second half, and he's throwing a Hail Mary, and the opposing safety intercepts the ball. And Brandon Marshall on the tape, you can see he's like a heat-seeking missile. He's guiding his way through his own offensive line and the defenders on the opposing team, and he seeks out the safety, and he hits him, and he stands him up, strips the ball, takes it from him, shoves the kid down, and scores a touchdown. So I said, yeah, I think that we can take that guy right there. So that was all we needed to see on that one.
Well, I think your best recruiting job you've done in your life is your wife, Linda. I mean, a Hall of Famer in your own house. Take us back to how you guys met back on campus. What was it, 81?
I can't remember the first time we met. I mean, I know that we would bump into each other from time to time around the school pool or the dome, but I believe it was actually it was a fraternity party off campus, and just a group of people, and we met, and the rest is history. Yeah, we were coaches at the same time as well. I mean, she graduated a year later than I did, but Linda actually became the first coach at UCF when she was on the cheer squad. They had more of a quote unquote sponsor that was a part of the marketing department in the university. But when the athletic department decided to move cheerleading to athletics, the sponsor recommended Linda be the coach. And so she's been the coach ever since. And don't tell anybody that I told you, but this is her 40th year coaching the program. Yeah. Wow. So that's pretty outstanding. 4 national championships, 40 years later. But when we met, we were both young coaches, and we wanted to pour our lives into UCF, and we really had an interest in, believing what Dr. Colburn said back then. That when he introduced Lou Saban, he said, this is where our goal is to go 1A, and this is the guy who's going to take us there. And we started drinking the Kool-Aid then, and still are, and think that our better days are still ahead of us.
I think you guys are the most prestigious UCF, for sure, couple, but family ever. I mean, I gotta have Bo and Mike and Torchy Clark. That Clark family's in there. Maybe the Giovanettis, but I think you and Linda have to take the cake as the most prestigious, definitely power couple of UCF.
All right. Well, all right. We'll take that, I guess. We've certainly been around a long time. I guess what I typically say to that was, somebody talks about a Hall of Fame, and Linda and I both being in there, I just say the Groucho Marx quote is, be careful of any group that would have you be a member, right? Well, no, we love UCF, no doubt about it, and are so excited about what's going on. And like I said, we both believe our better days are ahead of us even.
Coach, in 2000, after the 2003 season, you made the decision to essentially walk away from coaching. You took a role as sort of the fundraising arm for the university. What kind of went into your decision to step away from coaching after 20 plus years of being on the sidelines?
Linda and I had just adopted our two children at that time, and it just felt like that we did not want to get on that nomadic lifestyle of coaching different places. I had seen that as a coach, and I was very fortunate to be at UCF for 22 years. And no disrespect of anybody that has gone that route. It's just something that Linda and I, did not want to do. We were very interested in building UCF and being a part of that program. And also we just felt like we needed to supply some stability to two young lives that we brought into the family there. So, it was a big part of our decision.
Well, you've had some pretty cool jobs since then. I was talking to you before we started. You were once the GM of the Orlando Predators in the Arena Football League, which it's kind of a fun fact. Tell us about your experience as the general manager. How'd you like being management for the football team?
Yeah, they're all pretty tough. There's no doubt about it. The different levels that you have, but it was something that was brought to me by Ron House, who was the owner of the Predators at the time. Ron is an UCF alum, and we had known him during his days. He still is a contributor at UCF, and he had bought the Orlando Predators and wanted some help before they were going to close it. They did end up closing the league down, shutting the league down after that season. But that 1 year was very fun, interesting. I had the opportunity to ask Jay Gruden to hire Sean Beckton as our wide receiver coach, and Sean came in and did a great job. So it was great to keep that relationship going. But just seeing a different side of it, to have an opportunity to be in professional football as well. Even at the AFL level, it was certainly different. There's no doubt about it. Those guys are adults, and so there were no dawn patrols coming out of my office. That's for sure.
Well, now working with the Cure Bowl, you got involved with that from the very beginning. How did that all start?
I actually ran into Dave Brown, who was Dave Brown was an executive with ESPN, helping the ESPN events expand their business. So ESPN had called then athletic director Keith Tribble. Many people may or may not know that Keith Tribble was before he came to UCF as the athletic director, he was the CEO of the Orange Bowl. And so ESPN was looked to expand their bowl business back in the day, and felt like the Orlando market could handle another bowl. So they reached out to Keith. Keith, that game was going to be a Conference USA Big East game. Conference USA was all about it, but when the Big East officials came together to talk about the game, what I understand is that South Florida not only said no, but hell no, we don't want to help UCF have an event at their stadium. And so that game actually became the Beef O'Brady's Bowl that was played in Trop Field. Keith Tribble was talking to a group of boosters at UCF about that stuff happening, and there were a group of boosters there in the Golden Knights Club that were listening to Keith talk about that. And after the meeting, they said, "Well, hey, would you still like to have a bowl game here?" And Keith said, "Yeah, knock yourselves out." And that group was led by John Rhodes, who was a booster there. I believe John is still a booster. Jeff Lagos, Scott Rose, and Dave and Mac McLaughlin. That group, the core group of boosters that felt like, hey, let's try to get a bowl game still at UCF. And now it's coming full circle. That group of guys came to me, and so we just started grinding away, and we felt like, we know that all bowls have charity partners and charity components to their bowls. But when we were creating ours, there were some people that were a part of the bowl at that time that were struggling and battling cancer. And so we decided in the end to put our cause out front. And so the Cure Bowl was born back in 2008, originally with the Orlando Sports Foundation. Then the Great Recession came. The NCAA put a bowl moratorium on bowls. And so our first opportunity to have a bowl in 2015, we did it. And we had a great partner in Auto Nation at the time that helped us launch it. And the rest is history. To date, we've raised $4.1 million through the platform of the Cure Bowl, and 1.59 of that has stayed right here in Central Florida, with Dr. Annette Khalid at the new UCF Cancer Research Center. So we're very honored to be a part of that and have all of that going. And we're really excited about bringing the game to UCF. We know we've got an opportunity to re-educate the UCF Night Nation on what the Cure Bowl is, and that the money that some of the money that comes from the game obviously goes right to Dr. Annette Khalid and her research at the UCF Cancer Research Center. So we're really excited about that. We have a December 16th kick date at 3:30 on ABC. This is our first year on ABC. It was an honor that we were selected out of the 17 ESPN event bowl games. They selected the Cure Bowl to be on the ABC 3:30 time slot, and that's a great time slot on ESP on ABC, and so we're very honored to have that, and hope that we'll have a matchup that's worthy of that slot as well.
Which conferences are affiliated this year?
Guys, great question. We actually, if you look at us, we've had all the Group of Five bowls conferences in our game, but typically we are an American conference and a Sun Belt conference tie-in first tier. But if one of those conferences is not able to fill, then we'll work with other conferences. We've had Conference USA in our game. We've had the MAC conference, and we've also had the Mountain West conference in San Jose State. They actually were we had Georgia State and San Jose State in our first Cure Bowl. Now, we've had some good ones. If you watch that, we've had some good ones that have been, and the viewership has been good. I think the games have been great because the kids always come prepared to play and honor somebody that's battling cancer in their family.
How much would you enjoy it? I know it's asking a lot for them to actually win 6 games, but for South Florida to have to come play at the Cure Bowl this year, wouldn't that put a nice little smile on your face?
It would, because this game is about raising money for cancer research, and our mission is bringing teams together to find a cure for cancer. And so if South Florida was bowl eligible, they haven't been for some time. So if they could get 6 wins, this would be a nice, easy drive for them to come to UCF. We house our teams at Universal. They have a great time. And so we know that South Florida would have an opponent. I would pick an opponent for them. Obviously all the teams are great, but if you look at geographics and who would be great drive up for us, a South Florida Georgia Southern game would be a good geographic game. Georgia Southern, is a team that showed very well in their one bowl trip with us in 2019 against Liberty.
I know, Coach, great cause, obviously, the Cure Bowl, but I got to ask, how painful was that 2016 game? You finally got your alma mater in your bowl game, and that one just did not go. Obviously, it was a springboard to 2017, so we can look on the other side positively, but was that 2016 game a little bit painful, having your alma mater in your bowl game and have a rough showing like we did that day?
It was, what was real painful is packing up all of the UCF Cure Bowl champ gear that we weren't able to give them and ship that out to Africa, to some of the schools and the needy that had the opportunity to have that gear. So that was tough. We certainly thought that our Knights were going to be able to pull that one off. But, to Arkansas State's credit, and Terry Mahajer was the AD at Arkansas State at the time, they came to play, and they had some really good players as well. And Coach Blake, he did a great job in that game. And like you said, Scott Frost and his staff and that team took that loss to heart. Mackenzie Milton that spoke at our banquet, and he talks about it a lot. He never been booed off a field, and that was the first time he was booed off a field, and he remembered it. And they ripped off, two undefeated seasons. I think the next loss was to LSU, right?
Yeah.
Did you keep at least one of those T-shirts? Is there one of those hanging around? Maybe we can get our hands on?
I got one of those tucked away. Yeah.
You can get some big bucks probably for that thing.
You probably could actually get some eBay dollars up on that. Coach, we were talking before we recorded, obviously UCF moving on to the Big 12. How I know you get a chance to still be around. Obviously, you're still connected with college football as you're kind of monitoring teams for the bowl games this year. How excited are you for this move? Give me a prediction, a scouting report, a coach's viewpoint on what you think UCF will do in year one of the Big 12.
Yeah, I do think that there's an opportunity to be bowl eligible, but to do that, we have to. We certainly got to win the first 3 games, and Boise. All football games. It's tough to win a football game at any level. So all of them are going to be tough. But that Boise State game, that's the high desert. It could be 100 degrees that day, and even if we play that night, that sun is going to heat up that blue field, and it's going to radiate. I've been up there for some games in the past, and so that's one I'm really concerned about. But we got to win it. We got to have those 3 wins to be able to, in my opinion, to be bowl eligible, because that grind, that week in and week out with the Big 12 schedule is nothing to sneeze at. And there's a lot of good football teams. First year in, you're going to have a target, on your back. As it is, and so it's going to be hard. So I really believe there is an opportunity to be bowl eligible and get to the conference championship, possibly, depending on how healthy we are, because it's, as everybody knows, it's how healthy you are late in the season. But I think those first 3 games are going to be crucial, and that one at Boise is the one that can't have any hiccups in Boise, Idaho. And that high desert, we need to be prepared for that.
Obviously, UCF has a history of going into new conferences and starting off year one and a good fit. So hopefully this year will be just the same. Your time is really appreciated, Coach. Thank you very much for joining us. But before we let you go, we end every conversation with some rapid fire questions. This could be music, movies, sports, fun stuff, trivia. You never know what you're going to get here. So we've got some rapid fire questions for you. And my first one for you, I will be celebrating 20 years of marriage this December. So I've been with my lovely wife for a long time. Yeah. So I know how this works. Does Linda ever leave those 4 championship rings just laying around on the table for you to look at and just for you to see that she has 4 of those things and maybe you don't have 4 of them?
No, she does not. She does not. There's no doubt about it. We're still. I was there for all of them. And I'm very happy for her. But yeah, there's no animosity at all.
Safe answer. Okay, next question then. If you had 4, would you leave your 4 on the table to show her that you had those?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay, safe answer. I like that.
All right, what was the go-to date spot for you guys back in the early 80s around UCF? Where'd you guys go out to eat?
That's a good one. There used to be a place called Al and Linda's La Cantina. It's now just called Linda's La Cantina. They didn't fare so well in the marriage department, but that was our first date on Valentine's Day, no less. And but yeah, we still head out to Al and Linda's. I call it Al and Linda's, but Linda reminds me it's just Linda's La Cantina. Yeah, we still go there.
Yikes. Poor Al. Coach, I'm always amazed by the memories of football players and coaches. Can you still, to this day, can you right now call a play for Mike and I? Do you remember any play call from your time as a coach? Could you call a play right now for Mike and I?
Yeah, one of the my favorite calls was made UCF at Florida State. Florida State went down and scored, and Doak Campbell's going crazy. We get the ball back. Dante and Marquette Smith was our starting tailback at the time. He's I always like motioning to twins. So I believe it would have been Zach R. Flip 43. And so that play is a weak ISO play to the tailback. Fullback makes the block on the will linebacker, and the tailback goes. And so great block was made by the fullback at the time. And Marquette Smith squeezes out, gets to our sideline, and takes it down to the 2-yard line. I do believe he got tackled at the 2. But we punch it in a couple plays later, and it's 7-all. Doak Campbell is real quiet, and that 5,000 fans, we sold our allotment, but the 5,000 fans that were in the corner were just going crazy. Yeah, good call, and great play. I'll never forget it.
Coach, you look like you could be able to sing a little bit at a karaoke party. If I was having a party tonight and you were coming over to sing, what's your go-to song?
I've always been a Eagles Joe Walsh fan, and so "Life's Been Good So Far" by Joe Walsh. That was a go-to for sure in high school. But Coach, I could get Jimmy Buffett in there as well.
Yeah. Good call. You look like you're still in pretty good shape. Obviously, you're a former athlete. Did you ever try to or dare to hit the weight room with Mike Kruczek? Did you ever try to go pound for pound with Kruz, who obviously was a prodigious weightlifting guy?
No, man, he was so disciplined. Every morning at 5:30 he would be in there going at it, no doubt. I did always stay in shape by playing a lot of basketball. We played a lot of lunchtime hoops as a staff and with players. And I was the younger guy on the staff even before Mike came, and I always try to have a intramural basketball team in the off season for those football players that played basketball in high school. We would get some really good teams, that's for sure. And then sometimes we'd even play in 3-on-3 tournaments in the summertime together. Yeah.
I got a two-parter. One, what's the greatest football movie of all time? And two, if they were making a UCF football movie, who's playing Alan Gooch?
Let's see, the greatest football movie of all time. I was a big fan of Brian's song, the old Brian song with who was
Billy D. Williams, right?
Yeah, Billy D. Williams and
James Caan, no?
James Caan played Brian. Yeah, it was classic. And who would play Coach Gooch? Well, yeah, I'm not really a John Wayne figure, but I would wish it would be a John Wayne guy. But I always was a big John Wayne fan. That's for sure.
Obviously, you were around from the very early days, Coach. I'm sure you are a traditionalist at heart. What do you make of some of the new uniforms UCF has? First off, the Citronaut. What do you make of the Citronaut and the space game stuff? Are you in favor of that, or would you rather UCF stay more traditional?
No, I'm definitely in favor of the space game. I think it's something you rally around. And we're not forgetting our roots. FTU was created to supply jobs and skills for the Cape. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. That's the roots of the school. So I think it's great that we have a space game and that each sport team has a space game, and to go Citronaut is great. To do that, I think breaking that up and doing that is fine. But what I don't think is that the Citronaut is not our mascot. Nitro is our mascot. I remember back in the day, we've had different coaches come, in here at UCF, and I've worked under just about all of them. Before I did work under all of them up until we left. And, there was different marketing people that would come in and want to change the name. And I do recall, names like Sharks being brought up, or Panthers back in the day. And I would listen, hoping that none of that was going to get serious. And there was a point where it was getting a little serious. And I remember just making a point and looking around at everybody. And I said, I'm this, I'm the only alum here on the staff, but I'm not about this changing the mascot. I go, for marketing's sake, I go, what's a Blue Devil? What's a Cornhusker? Winning is what makes those names cool. You win a lot of basketball games, it's cool to be a Blue Devil. If you win a lot of football games, it's cool to be a Cornhusker. But those aren't what you would say are cool marketing names. So I was always a proponent of, we keep the Knights because that's who we are. We're Knights.
Was there a name that they were favoring? Was it Sharks? Was it the Panther? Was there a name that they favored?
There were names that were being thrown out like that. Yeah.
I don't know if I could be a UCF Shark. I don't know how that would work.
We're Knights, and you can't. In my opinion, you don't change that.
Well, what do you make of some of the uniform stuff
once
too?
a night, always a night.
Once a shark, always a shark. What do you make of some of the uniforms too? Obviously, there's been for a period of time, UCF went to anthracite, they went to pewter, they kind of got away from a lot of gold. Seems like that's kind of coming back in again. Are you a traditionalist? Would you like to see more gold reemerge in our uniforms, or did you like mixing it up with some of the pewter, anthracite, some of the grays that we were using?
I mean, I think that's fine. You know, to bring those things in. I think that, and I believe we did set the tone. You guys can look at the history, but I'm not sure if there was a team that wear black on black like we did back in the day. I remember the first time wearing it, you know, people were really kind of shocked, you know, black on black. But I think that's fine as long as you do stick to the school colors. You know, we're not yellow gold. You know, I know there was a time where, you know, there was maybe some marketing group or somebody was trying to stick in the yellow gold. We looked a little like the Pittsburgh Steelers, but you know, I think you stick with the true gold and black, because that's who we are. But white jerseys, certainly for that. I could see us wearing white jerseys for a high noon game here soon, and against a Baylor, and making them wear dark. You know, I'd be all about that.
Isn't it true that your wife Linda was actually part of the committee that created Nitro and developed the whole mascot?
That is correct. She was. She was.
Maybe that's why you're so partial towards Nitro. And were you part of that? Were you involved in that? And who came up with the idea for glycerin?
It's hard when you have dinner just about every night. The topic of conversation is something UCF, that's for sure. You know, and a lot of people got to remember, you know, it's not just UCF football, right? You know, for Linda's team, for example, they do all the women's games. They do all the women's games for basketball and all the men's games for basketball. Nitro does a lot of marketing events. Even does weddings, but you know, they represent the university in a lot of different areas, not just even on the sport field. And for baseball games, you know, she's got to have the mascots out. So yeah, Linda Gooch is, you know, 365, almost 24/7 UCF athletics. And so I certainly, I'm a part of that through that as well. Not that I don't want to be, you know, we're season ticket holders for all those sports, and we love going to the volleyball games, and the cheerleaders do the women's volleyball games as well. A lot of people don't know that unless you go to a game, but she's got quite a busy schedule, or we have a busy schedule, but we love it. We love it. You know, as the crow flies, we live less than a mile from campus and 5 miles if you drive the Jeep.
Would you be in favor of them bringing back Nitro's girlfriend, Glycerin?
No, I don't think Linda would be that fired up to do that. That's for sure. It's just more work, more stuff, right? I think Nitro does a great job.
What happened to Glycerin, Coach? Is she okay? Did she disappear? What happened to Glycerin?
Yeah, I don't know. You
it's a mystery. Okay.
Yeah, I have to have Linda Gooch on to talk about that one.
Okay, well, we'll unravel that mystery in a future episode of the
podcast. I think it might have been a bad breakup at homecoming one time.
It's a bummer. Yeah, those will really ruin your weekend.
Tina thing. I don't know.
Well, Coach, look, we appreciate you taking so much time out of your schedule and chatting with us tonight and sharing so many cool stories about UCF. Obviously, your name is synonymous with the history of UCF, and so grateful for your time. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to catch up with you at a game this season, but definitely appreciate your time tonight, and look forward to the Cure Bowl as well. I know we'll keep an eye on that matchup, and maybe as that gets closer, we'll have you back on to talk more about the matchup. But definitely appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate that. I look forward to being back and talking about our matchup at that time. Thank you. And I will see you at the games.